Hello and welcome to Aging Matters. This is a show that is provided by and sponsored by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. My name is Ann Barlet. I'm the Public Advocacy and Outreach Manager for the agency. Our show today is on elder abuse. It is being shown this month of June as related to and in conjunction with the month of June's National Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And my guest today is Detective Pamela Mathias, and she's a Berks County detective. And I want to say thank you for your time today and helping to share more information about elder abuse, making us more aware of that situation and the concerns with regards to elder abuse. So thank you
for having me.
You know, as much as the topic of elder abuse is a difficult one, I think it's also a necessary one. We don't want to kind of shove it, but a necessary topic to talk about and to really help us understand it and to make us more aware about this issue and at the end how to report it should we suspect it. So let's start right in, Pam. I guess really starting with kind of what is, when we talk about elder abuse, there are all kinds of different types, and could you just tell us what all fits under that elder abuse category?
Sure, there are different types. There's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's abandonment, there's self-neglect and just neglect in general, and then there's financial abuse and emotional abuse.
And that's a lot, because I think we think, you know, if I hear abuse, and I think I've talked to some other people, I think our minds maybe go right away to physical abuse.
Yes, that's correct.
So let's just, if you can, take some of those types and give me some ideas about what you reference, like emotional abuse or some of those others. Could you share that with us?
Sure. Well, let's start with the emotional abuse.
Okay.
The emotional abuse can happen when a caretaker or a family member uses threat tactics almost. When an individual might say, if you don't do this, you're not going to see your grandchildren anymore. If you don't do this, I'm going to withhold medication from you. If you don't do this, I won't take you to church this week. So you're working on the emotions of the individual, you know, the fear of them not being able to see their grandchildren anymore or being able to go to a place that they enjoy like church.
Okay.
So you have that. Physical abuse, the myth about physical abuse is that we should be seeing injuries with physical abuse, and that is not true. Somebody can grab an individual's arm and twist it to get their way, to make for compliance, and not leave any type of bruises. So physical abuse does not necessarily leave bruises or marks.
Okay.
All right. So that could be hitting, punching, pushing, that type of thing. And then you have sexual abuse, which is unwanted touching of any type. That can happen with a caregiver, that can happen also with a family member, a husband, a wife. So it's not just in a caregiving facility. And then you have abandonment. That's where a caretaker has, and again, caretaker, when I say caretaker, that means it could be a family member, it could be an outside agency.
So a person as a caretaker is to be a responsible party to assist in providing care.
That's correct.
To an elder. Okay.
So the caregiver, let's use an example of, let's say it's a child within the family who's taking care of a parent. And they decide, well, I want to go away for the weekend. And the individual who needs care maybe be bedridden, who needs 100% care in changing, bathing, feeding, going to the restroom. And this individual just decides to leave because they know they'll be fine, they'll be in the bed. And in the meantime, that senior is not being fed, not getting their medication, soiling the bed, and that's abandonment. All right. Then you have self-neglect. This is kind of a special one where it's not necessarily someone else causing the problem. It's where an individual really doesn't know how to take care of themselves or can't take care of themselves. And you might see signs of like newspapers piling up. Well, we don't get a lot of newspapers anymore, but you might see mail piling up, or at one time their yard was being maintained and it's no longer being maintained. So it might be a neighbor that you noticed that was a senior that might have had some problems, and now you're noticing some changes, and you can be concerned about that. You should be concerned about that.
And on that, I think it doesn't also mean necessarily because that the person maybe doesn't always remain in their home, though. They might be out walking around. They might go to a bank. They might do their banking or something where there are some appearance kinds of things, would you say?
Yes, yes.
Can you tell us a little what we might see? You know, what might also help us indicate that
you
might be going on?
see them disheveled in the sense where their shirt might not be buttoned correctly, or maybe the shoes they're wearing aren't appropriate, like they might be wearing slippers versus a regular walking shoe, or they could be out in the elements that they shouldn't be out in without a jacket in the middle of winter, all kinds of things like that.
Okay. Do you want to interrupt you there?
Oh, that's okay. And then we have emotional abuse, which kind of is also, did we cover emotional? We covered emotional, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Then we have regular neglect. So that would be neglect of from a caretaker. So the caretaker might not be doing their job. They're being paid for. It could be that they're being paid for it. They go in and they sign in that they're there to do the job, and they're not giving the care that the individual requires.
That they were supposed to be providing when they were scheduled to be there. It's you are to do this X, Y, and Z, and they're
just cutting their job short. Maybe they're feeding them, but they're not changing their bedding. And again, when I say caretaker, that also could be a family member who's been assigned to take care of them.
And it doesn't have to be a paid individual, right? It can be paid or unpaid as the person who's designated as a caregiver or someone providing that care for an older adult.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And then the last one, financial, which is absolutely one of the biggest ones we see as far as caseloads in our office.
And that's in Berks County specifically here.
All of these
as
are in
well
Berks
as I
County.
think a little bit bigger, but the financial exploitation
Yes.
is really prevalent.
That is
would you
correct.
say? Okay. So tell me about financial exploitation. What happens? How does that occur? What's going on there?
Well, the statistics there are approximately 67% of cases are from family members. And so it could be a son, a daughter, it could be a grandchild. It could actually be a neighbor, a trusted neighbor or a trusted friend that can also do the financial exploitation. And unfortunately, when this happens, they usually drain the senior of all their money. And then that's when the case comes into my hands, when the money's pretty much gone.
I think that since you mentioned that it is pretty prevalent, that 67%, I think it's important to really talk a little bit more about the financial exploitation. What happens? How does that happen? Where are there no checks and balances? Are there, how does it occur, whether it's somebody who is designated as the caregiver or whether it's just a family member who routinely stops in, and brings things or takes things, picks up meds, takes meds. How does that sort of, I guess, begin to happen? What are some examples that you've seen of ways that that's done?
Okay. Well, first, a lot of these cases, when it involves a child, they feel they are entitled to their parents' money because, when they pass, that money is going to go to me anyway, right? Which is not true. Obviously, the individual could have 10, 20 years to live off of what they have saved in their life for retirement, and for any medical expenses that come up. And so what we see a lot of is this entitlement where a family member feels they're entitled. Another check and balance you can put in place is you don't want one person as a power of attorney. You want two or more. There's your checks and balances. Where you're having more than one person that is handling, well, not necessarily handling your finances, because one person might do the handling of the finances, but you have 2 or 3 other eyes on that senior's finances where they see something's not right, it can be caught at an early stage.
So an example would be like if routine checks that we write are utility bills, you know, you kind of have an approximate amount that you're writing checks for every month.
Correct.
So you're seeing that, but then all of a sudden there's, you know, maybe a big check written or a big withdrawal from an account that isn't seem to be part of the pattern. Would that be an example?
That's a red flag, yes. And also, there's no reason for you to put your children's names on your bank accounts.
Oh, okay.
The power of attorney paperwork is enough. That just gives an extra where they don't have the ability to just go in and take money. So I always suggest never putting an additional person on your checking or savings account. Again, the power of attorney documents will be sufficient for the bank.
Okay.
And as far as when you assign your power of attorney, this is something you need to talk to your family about. You don't just want to pick anybody. You want to make sure it's somebody that doesn't have financial problems to begin with. You want to make sure it's not somebody who has an addiction, and I'm not just saying a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction, but gambling addiction as well. So anybody who's ever had that in their history, you kind of want to stay away from asking them to be a power of attorney. And the third thing I always say is you want to discuss this with the person you're asking to be the power of attorney, because just because you want maybe your son or daughter to be a power of attorney doesn't mean they want to be. So this is a serious topic. You need to sit down with as many family members as you, like if you have 4 children, sit down with all 4 children and say, who here would be interested, and make sure that those that say they are interested, when the time comes, that that they don't have those problems within their own life, that you know that they'll be good for you.
And a full understanding of what that power of attorney responsibility is.
Correct.
That they are responsible, if it's finances, to keep all money separate from your own, to make sure that all of those, whether you're writing checks for regular bills like utilities, or they're writing checks as gifts to other family members for birthdays, that still must be kept, you know, on a regular log that you would, and account for that on a regular basis, and so that you're keeping that separate so that it can be, if somebody comes to question it, right there it is.
That's correct.
Okay. And so if we, and really in designating power of attorney should be done while you are able to think about what you just said, to be able to know who is it, who would I like to manage that, whether it's financial, we'll talk about, but there is medical also. Who is the best person for us to do this together for me when I am not able to, and not when I'm not able to, now what's going to happen, right?
Exactly. So this is something you should do in advance.
And so we have that hopefully in place, and hopefully that is the person managing. But we have other people that come into our lives. We have family members, and I think, is that in your experience, a larger majority of people who are taking advantage financially of an elder? Or I'm also thinking of some of the examples where we've also had caretakers, whether they be informal or formal, family members who do some caregiving, or a formal individual that's paid to provide that care. What are some of those scenarios that you see?
Well, I've seen where the family has hired a caretaker to come in, and the caretaker befriends the senior, and obviously dotes on them. And, oh, you want a sandwich? Is this the sandwich you want? And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with a caretaker going above and beyond for the senior. And then there's those times when family members quarrel or argue, and maybe the one who is assigned as a power of attorney isn't getting along with mom or dad, but the caretaker is like a son or a daughter to them. And eventually a caretaker can be manipulative to say, well, you know, you don't have to have them taking care of your finances anymore. I'm here every day. I can take care of that. You're banking for you. I can take care of writing your bills. Don't burden your loved ones. And then all of a sudden things start changing, all the documents change, and then all of a sudden the money starts going missing. So there's one example of that. And it can happen not only with a caretaker, but a trusted neighbor. I've known of a case where the individual had no children, and the wife was deceased. And the neighbor for 20 years took care of his lawn and did painting work for him, and then the dementia set in, and that's, you know, he did nothing illegal before, and he was a kind, gracious neighbor, and then he took over the finances, and he decided to take advantage of it.
And is it, I don't know if this, again, in your experience, but is it, in the case, I'm just going to use that one as an example, so little by little, though, it seems to build up. Let's say that neighbor says, oh, well, yeah, I'll pay your bills, and you're writing bills, but you know you've been cutting that lawn, so it needs to be repaired. So I'll just take out a little bit, a small amount, whatever that would, to cover that repair of that lawnmower. But then little by little, we take a little bit more. Is that what you're seeing?
In all the cases, that's what you see. It starts out small, a little bit of money here, nobody saw it, a little bit of money there, nobody noticed it. Then a bigger chunk, then sometimes they divert their, where they might get paper statements. We do everything electronically now. No longer, all they do is say, don't send statements anymore to my dad or mom's house. We'll do it electronically. Mom and dad can't work the electronics because of whatever the reason. Their power of attorney is obviously already working for them. And so we see a lot of that where they say, oh, mom and dad, you're no longer going to get paper statements, so they no longer see the physical amount that's in their accounts.
Okay. And I think that with that, as I'm thinking about some of those examples, the caregiver who's in the home and, you know, is doing some extra work, and eventually, I know I've heard stories of, oh, you know, in their conversations, that caregiver has some children who need some dental work or something else, and the older adult is saying, well, here, take a little bit, I have extra, help them along. And that happens little by little that way too. Isn't some of that financial situation, it sounds like there's also some other things like emotional abuse, in a sense, connected with that, right?
There's always a little bit of emotional abuse going on when it comes to financial exploitation. You got to remember, these seniors really depend on their caretakers when it comes to, you know, they trust them. They trust them,
exactly.
And they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that to me, is kind of the response that you get from these victims. And a lot of times, some of the victims will tell me, I would have never thought. I would have never thought they would have done this. And
they were so nice, so kind, so caring.
Yeah, they don't necessarily always have to be mean, but yes, they will use emotional and emotional abuse with a lot of financials. For example, if you don't sign the house over to me, I'm going to do this or not do that.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people try to get the deeds to the home of their parents. So it's not only tangible funds, it's also property or belongings as well.
I want to just touch for a minute or two, since we're on financial exploitation piece, and we're hearing, and I'm not sure where that fits in what you've seen, but what about like the financial scams? Is there one or two that are more prevalent again, and give us like warning signs or do's and don'ts if you can?
Sure. Well, first of all, there are a lot right now.
Way too many.
Right now on AARP's website, there's 76 of them posted. All right. And the most prevalent ones we're finding work on your emotions. And I'll give you an example, grandparent scam they call it, where, and they use this artificial intelligence, this AI, that it even sounds like their grandchildren or a family member in urgent need. Now there's number one, if it's urgent, urgency is a big red flag. But so it's any type of urgent call. You need to pay this bill immediately or this will be shut off. If you don't go out and buy gift cards to pay this bill, your driver's license will be revoked because of parking tickets. If you don't pay for these parking tickets, I'm sending the sheriff's department out to your house to arrest you. And so they use scare tactics. So I hate to say that one fraud or scam is higher than another because they are all prevalent. But what the signs you need to watch out there for are urgency. Anything that is urgent. They're asking for payment by gift cards. That's a no-no. Gift cards are for gifts, period. Let's make that very clear. No reputable business will ever ask you for gift cards as payment. Second, so following the urgency is keeping secrets. Don't tell mom and dad, I want to tell them later. Don't tell anyone we called. So keeping something secret, that's big in romance scams, where don't tell your kids because they won't understand. So romance scammers use that all the time. So you have that. We always say verify. When you get some of these calls that are urgent or they strike up an emotion in you, you know your grandchild's phone number or your children's phone number to call them to say, can you verify? So take the time to do that. And the scammer will be like, no, 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 you can't hang up. You can't hang up, and they're going to try to keep you on the line. But you say no. You say, I'm going to verify. So we have verification. Urgency, anybody who does gift card, asks you for payments by gift cards or even the wire transfers. Wire transfers are when you want to wire money to somebody and you know that individual and you're not being coerced into it.
Okay, good.
So there's
Thank you.
those
I wanted to make sure we just touched on a little bit of that. So let's, in the last couple of minutes, let's look at what can we do? Like what, if we're seeing neighbors do certain things, or I'm seeing, at the bank, and I'm seeing a gentleman come in a little disheveled, I'm concerned. What if somebody comes in with that individual that I've never seen and I see them kind of helping them take money out, or other examples? What are some of those we should be on the lookout for, and then what do we do?
Okay, so first of all, just know that any report that you call in can be anonymous, all right? However, make sure you give us a little piece of something, whether it's an address or a name and an area of where this individual lives, so that they can be checked on. And it could be, if it's a bank teller or somebody within the bank, they are trained to watch for those signs of somebody helping them getting money out that they don't recognize. And they have a SAR report that they would fill out. So that would come directly to the local police department or our office to be able to look
into that.
So we have that, but I mean, you could be somebody that's at the bank and not an employee of the bank, and you know this individual that you see come in. You can report that.
And you see some changes perhaps in that person. Or as you said, even in the home, if you're seeing changes outside of the home, or if you are able to be in the home, you drop off maybe a meal periodically, and you're kind of looking at, you can see some changes.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe you call an individual who's a senior every other day or every day, and all of a sudden they're not picking up their phone.
Okay.
And they're not picking up their phone, or when they do a day or two later, they're just not right. Something's not right. They might sound depressed, but just because they're not telling you that an abuse is happening, that doesn't mean it's not happening. So signs like that, or even, let's say you have a lot of seniors in your church. I always use church as an example. And the son or daughter who you know is a power of attorney won't let that senior talk to anybody. And maybe you'll see some bruises, maybe you won't, but they look fearful.
Yes, I was going to say,
You
or
know.
just easily excited.
Yes.
That they hadn't before. Okay.
So if you see those types of changes, again, just report it, because nothing's going to, if there's no abuse there and we investigate it, that's fine. But if you don't report it and there is abuse, and we could have maybe kept that from happening,
Or
prevented
gotten there
it.
sooner than a further
Right.
continuation of that abuse.
Right. Then, you did the right thing. So even if it's just, I'm thinking it might be, report it.
There's a gut that tells you
Yes.
there's something not right here. Let's report it. So let's repeat that you can file a report. A report can be a verbal report. As you said, it can be anonymous reporter. The information remains confidential, and as much information as you have in order for that investigation to begin and to look into it to see what's going on. I have a slide, if we can just put that up real quick, as to where to report it. There's 2 locations. You can contact the Berks County Area Agency on Aging at 610-478-6500, and note you're going to make a report of abuse. Or you can call the Pennsylvania Department of Aging's 24-hour hotline at 1-800-490-8505. And in our one last minute here, anything in the last minute, Pam, that you would like to make sure that we, as we leave today's conversation, we all know or remember about elder abuse?
Just know that if an individual has the slightest signs of any of those abuses, and let me just repeat those abuses again: the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, the abandonment, self-neglect, neglect, and financial or emotional abuse. If you see any signs of what we talked about today, please report it. Do not hesitate. Let us decide whether or not this is happening within the home.
Good. Good. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today and the information you shared with us. And thanks for tuning in to Aging Matters.